Alright guys, let me start off by saying I don't really care for Genesis, and this isn't a video desperately hoping for his return. I think that's how most people in the community feel, but I'm fully aware there's a decent amount of people who do like Genesis. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong or you're an idiot or whatever, just for me personally, I just don't really care for him. With all that being said, we can't ignore the possibility of his return simply because we don't like the guy, so let's take a look at some of the things that may point to his appearance in Rebirth, or maybe even some future DLC. And guys, for all future Final Fantasy updates, theories, and other content, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out. The first and obvious reason is the fact that they remastered Crisis Core. Now it could have just been a money grab for Square Enix, but I'm not so sure. Square Enix re-released Crisis Core for a reason. They want us to play through this game. But it doesn't make sense to release a game that spoils the biggest twist in the original Final Fantasy VII, unless of course they have something massive planned, which I'm sure they do. It's just too much of a coincidence for this game to come out for it to only be a cash grab. They want players to be familiar with the events and characters of this game for a reason. In Crisis Core, during the events in Nibelheim, Genesis makes an appearance and is partially to blame for Sephiroth losing his mind, which is something that didn't happen in the original game. Why would they release Crisis Core Reunion showing these events only to have players wonder where the hell Genesis is in Rebirth? He might be absent during the flashback scene when Cloud is telling the party in Calm, but this could be explained by his unreliable storytelling, or because Cloud wasn't actually present during that exact moment when Genesis appears. We know Rebirth ends at the Forgotten Capital, so we might not see the true events of the Nibelheim incident until Part 3. However, the developers did confirm things may be switched around, so it's possible Cloud will learn the truth near the end of the game, and Zack and Genesis will make their appearances, setting up their story arc for Part 3. Several years back, the developers confirmed the remake project was the 5th installment in the Final Fantasy VII compilation, and they planned on incorporating elements from the entire compilation into the remake project. This was later confirmed once we saw the inclusion of Deep Ground, Vice, and Nero in the Intermission DLC. Anyone who played the Intermission DLC and played Crisis Core Reunion would certainly recognize Vice's hair at the end of Crisis Core when he and Nero pick up Genesis. So the ending of Crisis Core, at the very least, reveals that Genesis is alive. And again, why release this game, a game that's confirmed to be canon, only for there to be zero development for Genesis? Now, some people in the community think this DLC was merely fan service for fans of Dirge of Cerberus. I think it's much deeper than that, and it has a lot to do with Genesis coming back. And if you're still listening at this point, I just have to ask, why would they incorporate elements of Dirge of Cerberus and hints of Genesis' return when they're arguably some of the worst aspects of the compilation? It's because they know they can make it better. The remake trilogy is their chance to finally bring all the elements from the entire compilation into one brilliantly told story. The incorporation of Deep Ground is perhaps the most damning piece of evidence supporting Genesis' return. Deep Ground used to be a medical facility for injured soldier troops. Military personnel would be sent there for their care and rehabilitation. However, over time it evolved into a laboratory for madmen content on ignoring all laws of man and nature. And supposedly this evolution took place because of the existence of one rogue soldier, a man known only as G. Genesis' genes can be copied onto other living things to enhance them. His DNA is unique and was used by Deep Ground to further their experiments, such as enhancing the Sviets. He's abducted at the end of Crisis Core in hopes of joining Vice and Nero, but Genesis opted to basically become Minerva's warrior and protector of the planet. He seals himself in a cave, only to wake up when the planet needs him most. And as we know, we see him wake up at the end of Dirge of Cerberus. Anytime this argument comes up, it's always followed up with, well, where was Genesis during the events of OG FF7 or Advent Children when the world needed him? And I mean, honestly, the answer is simple. The world didn't need him. It's not difficult to understand that everything turned out alright in the end, which is why he wasn't needed. But this time around, things are different. The developers have two options. They can build off the secret ending of Dirge of Cerberus, or they can simply have Genesis emerge much sooner than he previously did. At the end of Dirge of Cerberus, he picks up Vice, says he has work to do, and then flies away. Perhaps, thanks to Minerva, he caught wind of what Sephiroth was trying to accomplish and used his own knowledge of the lifestream and Minerva's guidance to travel back in time, similar to what Sephiroth is doing. Should he emerge sooner than the Dirge ending, then it makes you wonder, will he seal himself again, considering Dirge and Advent Children are canon? Perhaps the world of Final Fantasy VII is some, never-ending time loop. Genesis means beginning, Omega means end. Perhaps the story of Final Fantasy VII always begins with Genesis emerging from that cave, and of course ends with Omega being summoned in Dirge of Cerberus. I mean, I don't even know, man. I'm just kind of getting off topic at this point. Now, moving forward, I want to make one thing clear. Genesis's purpose is to protect the planet, not the people of the planet. And during Remake, what was the biggest threat to the planet? Well, I mean, it was kind of us, right? I mean, at least the general consensus among the community was the Whisper Harbinger was basically a weapon willed into existence to preserve the timeline and protect the planet. Preserving this timeline was the planet's will, and I won't be surprised if we find out Minerva and Genesis were behind this. The party's relation with Minerva was antagonistic because we were defying her will. But regardless, I think we were tricked by Sephiroth into destroying the Whisper Harbinger. The future is unknown at this point, and perhaps the greatest threat the planet will ever face is unfolding. What more of a reason would Genesis need to emerge from his slumber? This very event is practically begging for him to emerge. Should Genesis make an appearance in the Remake trilogy, what role will he play? Hero, villain, anti-hero? And which timeline will he be in? Will we see him in Zack's world or Cloud's world? Well, if I had to guess, I think he'll appear in Zack's world. Genesis doesn't have much of a direct association with Cloud, but he does with Zack, so it makes more sense to appear in Zack's world. And the funny thing about Zack's world is the huge rift in the sky, and specifically Elmira's dialogue in the trailer. The world is ending, at least that's what they're saying. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, that rift in the sky straight up looks like a deity might descend from it. A goddess perhaps? When the war of the beasts brings about the world's end, the goddess descends from the sky. Wings of light and dark spread afar, she guides us to bliss, her gift everlasting. Now, there's no shortage of interpretations when it comes to this damn poem, and I'm not about to turn this into a full-blown Loveless analysis video because the topic of this video is simply to show how likely it is we'll see Genesis, but I wanted to talk about the prologue just for a couple of reasons. When the War of the Beasts brings about the world's end, this can be any number of things, from Shinra to the weapons to Avalanche. Really anything can fit if you think hard enough. But if we're strictly talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake and Genesis's return, perhaps this is referencing Sephiroth and Genesis. Beasts is just another name for monsters, and if you remember correctly, that's what they always refer to themselves as in Crisis Core. If Genesis does have some sort of influence over the Whispers and the Whisper Harbinger as I mentioned earlier, then this is basically a war between Sephiroth and Genesis. Genesis is trying to preserve the balance of the world by keeping the timeline intact, while Sephiroth is using the party as pawns in his war to destroy Destiny. And what happens after this War of the Beasts? We have Elmira saying the world is going to end. The goddess descends from the sky. Could it be Minerva? Well, I mean, it's very, very possible, especially if Genesis is coming back. And again, I mean, why the hell would they release Crisis Core Reunion? Every new person that plays Crisis Core will be wondering where the hell these extra characters are in the Remake trilogy. Minerva is one of those characters that didn't really have much involvement or explanation, and as I said earlier, the Remake trilogy is the perfect opportunity to finally bring everything together. It all comes down to how well they execute it. Wings of light and dark spread afar. This could be in reference to Angeal and Sephiroth or Angeal and Genesis. We've seen the white feather several times in Zack's world, and we've seen the black feather in Cloud's world. Spread afar could be in reference to the distance between timelines. The War of the Beasts brings about the world's end. Wings of light and dark spread afar. The timelines are drifting further apart and the balance of the world is in jeopardy. Or perhaps it simply references Genesis and Angeal, since it seems likely this will all take place in Zack's timeline. We'll find out soon enough, but I think Loveless will remain relevant throughout the Remake trilogy. She guides us to bliss, her gift everlasting. Simply put, she's guiding them to the life stream. The peace death brings is everlasting, and because the world is ending, it's very likely we'll see Omega Weapon. The rift in the sky looks similar to when Omega appeared in Dirge of Cerberus. Omega serves as a last resort. When all life on the planet is threatened, Omega is born. Omega absorbs the life stream into itself, and when finished, it flies into space. From there, the cycle of life begins anew. Okay, so I know I got way off topic here, but I mean, the point is this trilogy has been in development for a very long time. I think I read it's been a little over 10 years. I think I read that a couple years ago. I mean, they've had all this time to bring everything together into a brilliantly told story. They've had time to figure out how to incorporate Genesis in a remake, whether it's starting from the end of Dirge or, I mean, having him emerge sooner in the story. I can go on and on with wild theories involving the entire compilation, such as Sephiroth using Omega to escape Gaia with a pure life stream, or Aerith replacing Minerva in the end, but I'll save this for another video if you're interested. What I've come to realize though is the more you look at the elements of the entire compilation, the more you can convince yourself Genesis will be returning. And it's not even like you have to make great leaps or assumptions for it to make sense. I mean, just look at the creatures we fought in Deep Ground and tell me you don't notice it. I'm sure Square Enix is fully aware how much Genesis is hated by the majority of the community. This is their opportunity to redeem him by writing his character better, whether he's a hero or a villain. I can't tell you how many characters across all types of media I started off hating, but ended up loving once everything was said and done. I'm hoping Genesis will be one of those characters where I end up loving the way his character is written and his overall character growth. I think there's a 100% or no, like 1000% chance Genesis will either be referenced or make some minor appearance in Rebirth. We'll either come across lab reports speaking of him, or he'll be an optional boss in the simulator. He might even be an optional boss using the brand new proto relics. Game lore aside, we still have subtle hints that may or may not be anything. The name Rebirth could be in reference to Genesis being reborn, however I'm convinced it's referring to Sephiroth and only Sephiroth. But we also have the red logo as well as how the logo lights up. Both are very reminiscent of Genesis. As far as Genesis having a major role in the remake trilogy goes, I'd say there's about a 50% chance of it happening. They can definitely make it work, but they need to nail the execution. From what I've seen so far in Remake, Intermission, and the Rebirth trailers, I think the developers can and will knock it out of the park. My only hope is they make him a little less, a little less lame, man. But only time will tell. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and please consider subscribing. As always, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. For now, I'll leave you guys with Act 5 of Leveless. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.